Starting off the hour with today's proverb, CT, of your swanky gadget.
Yes, the we haven't introduced the guest, so I can't
Don't worry.
So I cannot show off this gadget.
I'll give you a minute to show off. Our guest is in the studio, and he's just looking at you as you want to show off. So show off a little bit, and then we'll see how he'll help you preen your feathers.
Engineer, this gadget is called a Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra.
Uh-huh.
The thing about it that is remarkable, well, at least what I find remarkable, is the clarity with which one sees things. In fact, I can actually show it to you so that you can see.
Uh-huh.
It's clear to the point where it actually feels palpable. That's one. Two, its size.
It's thin.
Yes, exactly. And the screen is big enough. But this particular gadget has a charge that can last 3 days.
Wow.
Yes. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then Thursday is when you start worrying about it. But the clarity with which you can read things is what I have found fascinating, especially if you're going to read a proverb.
From Guinea, no less.
The proverb is from the country of Guinea. And I've been telling our guests in the course of the week that it isn't Papua New Guinea. It is not Equatorial Guinea. It's not Guinea-Bissau. It's Guinea.
Guinea.
Just Guinea.
Stand alone.
But
Start the Guinea.
Yes. For news of the heart, ask the face. For news of the heart, ask the face. That's the proverb of the day.
I love it.
So does mine look like?
You look happy.
Good.
Is that what your heart is saying, engineer?
I think his heart is saying, I mean,
I'm a happy man.
the face rarely lies.
Indeed.
Yes, and if the face tells a lie, the eyes will correct you.
The man with a happy heart is engineer Michael Kamau, and he joins us in the studio today to talk about the menace of collapsing buildings in the country. Engineer Kamau, you're no guest to the Situation Room, but you all the same are a guest this morning in the hot seat. Karibu sana.
Asante. Thank you.
You're doing all right?
I'm good.
Since the last time we spoke,
Yes.
it's good to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to see you once more.
Since the last time you were here, if we're just going to jump right into it,
Yes.
a number of buildings have collapsed in the city.
In fact, we could say while you are away.
While you were away.
And they'll continue collapsing.
Yes.
Ow.
Oh dear.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes.
Hold on. Just a minute. From 2013 until about 2015, you were the man who was tasked with overseeing roads and infrastructure.
Yes.
You built some good roads in this country. You got some things really cemented, no pun intended. But you oversaw infrastructure. Today, we seem to have a problem. And just as we were talking before we started this, you said today is not even the problem. 20 to 30 years from today
Yes.
is the problem.
What happens?
What happens?
If they are collapsing when they are new, even before they are occupied, what's going to happen when we are hit by an earthquake, a tremor, or strong winds that now are the thing with climate change? Or the way it happened in Germany, flooding, serious flooding along the valleys where people are building. It's going to have a very big impact on our economy. And number two, the reputation, tourists, people coming into this country. 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, I only used to hear of buildings collapsing in Egypt, which is an ancient, maybe very old buildings. But now, every day in Kenya, every other day, and I'm sure there are buildings that never get to be seen on TV. So
Okay.
it's a serious situation.
We wanted to ask questions about why this is happening in the manner in which it's happening. Last week, we had a conversation with, engineers.
Yes.
It's the profession of solutions, as we say, the career of solutions that gives solutions that should then be banked on. But then understanding the process through which, licenses are given, hopefully that procedure is followed, and that there's a certain modus operandi about how these things should be done. What are we looking at here? From your experience, from what you would ask that people actually do, what are we looking at here? And what should be, cautionary note in the back of our minds?
Number one, buildings don't collapse. They collapse for only one reason. Engineering. Nothing else. Not because they are tall, not because they are short, not because they are ugly, not because they are painted, not because they have windows, not because they don't have windows. It could be a cave without a window. It could have air conditioning. The answer is purely engineering. It is structural failure. Period. That's why they collapse. All buildings and all structures are designed to fail up to a certain limit. You can load it up to a certain limit. And without going into engineering details, buildings will collapse because of their own dead weight. That means if we evacuated all equipment and everything in this building, that is its dead weight. Then we come and we add things, we add people, that's live load. And then we can add other things, dynamic loads, like wind and earthquake. So that's what is going to cause the buildings to collapse. So it's pure engineering. If we start on that basis, then we are not going to have arguments about people trying to get into the spaces that they don't occupy. It is engineering. And that is the core of the problem that we should be tackling about. There are other issues about buildings, of course, but they may cause latent effect. If they are poorly ventilated, you may die from that. But the collapse of a building is purely an engineering matter. And that's where it starts.
Do I hear you to be saying that everything that you've mentioned forms part of what anyone who is in the business of engineering or construction considers before they put up a building?
Exactly. Because when you are putting up a building, there are very many aspects to it.
Yes.
You start with the foundation. Are you on solid foundation? Because if you are not, then your building is going to sink. Or
what's a solid foundation, engineer?
A solid foundation is a foundation that is designed to withstand the loading that you are going to put on it.
And the loading is dead weight plus
dead
the
weight plus the live load and other dynamic loads that are going to come, wind and earthquake, which generally just present horizontal loads.
Yes.
So that's what we are talking about. Now, from there, what materials do you use, and how do you use them? Okay, even in food, that some people cannot eat honey and drink milk. They have problems. So there is a system. Even if you had the best cement, the best aggregate, the best steel, yet you do not mix them properly, or even if you mix them properly, you do not place them properly, then you have a problem.
Meaning everything you're saying, there's a science to it.
There is a science.
And that is what people go to study.
That's what people go to study.
Yes.
So why would you not place these things properly? It may sound like a very silly question, but why would you not do that?
And that's where everything becomes very, very complicated. Let's start with a building. Before you build, the owner has spent so much time to acquire that property. And there is a very, rigorous procedure. First of all, you do a search to find out whether that property is owned by somebody else. You go to a lawyer, somebody is selling, you craft an agreement, and you have to go to the Ministry of Lands to get consent to transfer. You transfer the documents, and then you get your title, and it is registered. Then you start deciding what kind of house you are going to put. Is it single story? Is it 2 stories? And so on. Then I wonder, and you have money, because the buildings that are collapsing are not 2 million, it's not 3 million.
No.
They are worth 20 million. Where does your knowledge stop? Where does your thinking stop? Somebody who has earned his 20 million, 30 million, does it just end when it comes to a position where you could spend maybe $500,000 to employ professionals, or $1 million to employ professionals to safeguard your interest? But in all this, the person responsible is actually the government, because we know we cannot regulate ourselves. I mean, I want to get married, I fall in love with somebody, the government still steps in and tells me, oh no, you have to go to the AG chambers. Where is your ID? Your ID has to be proper. If your ID doesn't match your birth certificate, you have a problem. Then you have to be in the IPRS system. Then they tell you have to have 21 days. And even the government foresees a problem in your marriage and has arranged legal procedures for divorce.
Yes.
So, if I may take you back, maybe to give it a historical perspective, the first famous collapse in this country happened with the Sunbeam supermarket. Yes. I don't know whether you remember.
I remember it very well.
In 1996.
Because Sunbeam was in the middle of town.
Yes, and it was raining.
Yes.
And it was just a canopy. In that collapse, I lost a cousin. My cousin, with whom we were schoolmates in secondary school, 1996. Then we can move fast forward. The next shocking disaster that happened was the Sunbeam fire in downtown Nairobi. And the last famous one that really shocked this country was Nyamakema. Yes. You remember, in the middle of town. Yes. And that is when the government decided that something had to be done. After the Sunbeam collapse, there was a commission that was formed, led by Dr. Mutiso, a very renowned architect.
Yes.
They produced a report which was not acted upon. In 2006, when this Nyamakema building collapsed, the government came in and decided that they needed to do something. And having looked at the legislative framework, they decided that we needed to have a National Construction Authority. And the birth of the National Construction Authority was based on the Mutiso Commission report and the collapse of the Sunbeam. So I would place the blame mainly on collapsing building on the National Construction Authority, because the government did that legislative framework. They have powers to enter site, they have powers to stop construction, and subsequent to that also. And I'm saying this because I was instrumental. I was the PS in charge of public works, and that is when we did all these works with a lot of support from World Bank. The World Bank even bought equipment, furniture, vehicles for the National Construction Authority. Subsequent to that, I, as PS, working with World Bank, supported by World Bank through funding, we did what we did with the Engineers Act. Took it to Parliament, because before it was just the Engineers Registration Board, which had very limited scope, just registering engineers. But then, when we did the new act, it allowed engineers, through the Engineers Registration Board, to enter into any site and stop the construction. So again, I would say the registration is there. And subsequent to the Act, the National Construction Authority Act and the Engineers Act, they should have gone, or I think they have gone and formed now the regulations. We should enable them to regulate the construction industry. And I think the blame falls on those two institutions. Yeah.
The NCA may say something totally different, because they will say, they have said that some of these matters, they are an oversighting body, and that they cannot get directly involved in each and every construction that takes place. Is that a false notion?
I think that is weakness, because Parliament we have a Parliament in this country. If they feel that the registration is not enabling, they should just go and have the act amended. There was no National Construction Authority. It never existed. What they should do is we are changing our constitution, which is the supreme law. It has been changed. So why would we not amend the National Construction Authority? Why would we, the act that formed the National Construction Authority, that gives them now mandate, it didn't have to be perfect, but they could build on that act, so that working with county governments, such that they make county governments their agents to assist in supervision of construction and regulation of the structure. They cannot cry, and I don't think forming another authority other than the National Construction Authority to help in this situation is going to be helpful.
Well, you're not alone in this conversation, and joining us is our good friend Philip Kisia, who's a former town clerk, but then also a governance expert, as we look at some of these matters today. The last time you were here, Philip, I said it should be Dr. Philip Kisia, so we're still working on that. I hope you're doing that with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Ndu. How are you?
Very well. Karibu sana.
Yeah, I'm still working on it, and I want to earn it.
You want to earn it? No, I'm just going to give it to you, of course.
I don't want to be given.
No, we're not just going to give it to you.
There are so many fake doctors around here.
Maybe fake others as well,
My engineer friend is not one of them.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not acquired the title.
You're not the quack type, so
Not
still work in progress.
Karibu Sana.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. I know that Nairobi in the morning can sometimes be quite a challenge, but we're glad that you're here. And we're looking at this menace in Nairobi, and not just in Nairobi, but in other parts of the country as well. And under your watch, looking at when you were in a leadership role in Nairobi, there were these incidences of buildings coming down. Probably one would say that they're happening with more regularity now. Engineer Kamau has told us that, look, the NCA has a role and responsibility to play here. What would you attribute this problem to? Too many have come down. What would you attribute it to, and what do you think needs to be done?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me once again. We're just about to close the year, and for making it possible for me to meet my very old friend. I've not met him for probably 3-4 years now. I think.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, engineer. I still call him CS. He's my CS. And worked with him for many years, even before he became a CS or PS, and eventually a CS in the government of Kenya.
Yeah.
In the government. When there was a government in Kenya.
Oh wow. Okay.
The Mwai Kibaki government. I think that's only probably government that functioned in Kenya. We're looking forward to other governments in future.
Ndugu,
You've said many things in that
started on a high
statement.
note.
Yeah, you know, facts are facts. They are painful, but they must be. We must say things as they are. And I know, bro, you'll admit that the Kibaki government, and that's why people refer to me as, oh, Philip, you are the ones who worked in the Kibaki
Town
government.
clerk, yeah.
You are the ones who worked. I'm not the one saying it. But I'm only saying what people say.
Okay.
Let me get back to the topic of today.
Please.
I came in when an engineer was saying that the National Construction Authority has a mandate in building plan approvals. That's a devolved function. It's a devolved function. I think we need to refer to the 2010 Constitution. The National Construction Authority is an important authority. They register contractors, they oversight work of construction and contractors.
Yes.
While the department in the county that deals with planning approves building plan approvals. But my sister here said that, during my tenure, they were collapsed building. I say, I only ran the city for 36 months.
3 years.
3 years. And during that time, you can go back to your records, only 3 building collapsed. I'm not saying it's a good record, because any building collapsing is,
It's lost.
It's a loss. Sometimes you lose human life. Of course, you lose money. And, you lose the image. So the loss is heavy. But let me say this, and I'll give you a little story. I remember there was a time, I'll not mention names here, because some of them are people we know.
Some of them are still alive.
Some of them are still alive. Some of them are dead. They're going to meet their creator. Thank God. But I remember very well, there was a building here in Embakasi, not too far from here. Actually, I think less than 4 or 5 minutes drive from here. My very good director of planning, Tom Odongo, and my dear friend Rose Mwema, those are the people I put in charge of planning department, came and told me, sir, there's a building in Embakasi that has been constructed without our approval. We've tried to, we've given enforcement notice to bring it down. They have gone to courts. They've gone to court, and they have court order. But that building will collapse. So I sat in my office and said, okay, you mean you explain to the courts, the Kenyan courts, that there's a building likely to collapse and kill people, and they have issued an order? I said, yeah, an order has been issued. And I had to make a very hard decision to defy a court order. And I said, I would rather defy that court order, try and defend it in court, be imprisoned than lose lives. And I called the OCPD and I said, you know what? I need security because we are going to pull down that building. And, everything was set. But the night before, I got a call from the same OCPD, and they told me, no, Philip, Mkubwa, please. Those fellows, the cartels have organized 500 goons, armed. If you come there, more people die. And I said, I don't care. I said, no, we have to call off the operation.
The operation of the building construction.
I was going to pull down that building with or without a court order. And I told my team, it must come down. But again, you see, you already have been given an alert that your action will lead to more deaths. So I had to call off the operation. But I said that I will disobey that court order, bring down that building. So I issued in writing. Do you know what? 3 days after the operation was called off, the building collapsed.
Were there people inside that building?
Yes, it was under construction. And I think we lost, very unfortunately, we lost about, 2 lives, not about 2 lives. Okay? But still I was going to appear in court the same week. So now, these are the fellows rush to court and say, this man has disobeyed a court order. He has already given an enforcement notice, and he should go to jail. So it was God's act.
For you to stop it ahead of time.
That I'm supposed to appear before the same judge to be jailed, but jailed for what?
Because the building
The
collapsed.
bill has come down. Not through my act, but because the building was poorly constructed. It was built on weak sand. No approval, nothing, no engineering, nothing. It came down.
It came down.
So the point being that, the National Construction Authority is there. The Department of City Planning then, or now County Planning Department, are there. And I can tell you for free, at least so far as the county is concerned, it is run by professionals.
Okay, let's take a break, because if it's run by professionals and it's happening in the manner in which it should be, then the question still remains, then why are buildings still coming down?
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Kenya's biggest conversation continues this morning. Ndu Oko and CT Muga with you today. Eric away for some days, but our conversations continue. We're in the studio talking about the menace of collapsing buildings, joined by engineer Michael Kamau and friend Philip Kisia. Now, Philip, as we came off the break, talking about a devolved function with the departments at the county level, and that there is professionalism that is practiced. Before you came in, Engineer Kamau told us that this is an engineering problem. And then we say there's professionalism going on. So where is the issue? There must be a spot that is being missed here. If you're telling us that there are people who hire goons to make sure this doesn't happen, it seems to me as though impunity and corruption is at the heart of this very matter. But maybe you have a different outlook to this.
Thank you, Ndu. What my brother has said is true. But there are other factors that contribute to collapse of buildings. And I would say that he is right by saying that, engineers should be taking the stick. But the other factors, one, the materials that are used in constructing the buildings. And who approves the materials? It is Kenya Bureau of Standards. KBS. They're the ones who are mandated to look at the quality of our goods and materials. So are they doing their job? Is one question. Kenya, the National Construction Authority, the oversight, Are they ensuring that things are done the way they're supposed to be done? That materials are right? That the engineers professionals have actually been involved in the process of construction? Okay. Then there is the issue of I think the geo report, okay, which I think is not being taken into account. Do they look at the soil profile, geotechnical report? Do they look at the soil profile? Do they look at the structural integrity of the foundation? That is the work now of the National Construction Authority, because they're the ones who approve the construction companies. But then also the Department of Planning. As the work progresses, are there audits that are carried out by professionals? So, Ndu, you're right. It actually just boils back to things that we talk about. Number one, that there are cartels operating this city and in other cities and in this country, that they do things with impunity, that you can actually start constructing a building that will be occupied not by animals but by human beings, and you go up to the 12th floor without approvals. You are using the wrong materials, you are using quacks, everything is just totally wrong.
And without even a lift.
Then you ask yourself, what is then the county government doing in terms of enforcement and compliance? What is the National Construction Authority doing? And the other agencies like NEMA, to ensure that the environment is protected.
NEMA.
KEBS, yes, NEMA.
Okay.
KEBS.
So, Ndugu Philip, know the thing is, you suffer from the same malady that I do. It's historical. When you're a certain age, as does the engineer, we all know over time when things worked.
Correct.
Okay. And they worked a certain way, and you could rely on those processes. You more or less took them for granted. You knew this is the path, this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. That is no longer the state of things in this country.
Nothing has changed. I tell people that there was murder. And I always tell people that the first murder was committed by God's grandchildren.
Yes.
You see? So let's not get shocked. And buildings used to collapse, the Tower of Babel, and they'll continue that way. People are marrying. You remember I gave an example?
Yes.
That the government, the blame squarely falls on the government. Because we have proved that we cannot regulate ourselves. We have proved that we can drive cars when we are drunk. Somebody killed people at the bypass. 7 people drunk. Okay, then they want to say the road is not okay. The government intervenes in everything. And that is why my good friend here said, National Construction Authority, engineering professionals, the planners who approve and actually receive fees, because the county government, they receive fees for approval. Every time they visit, they are supposed to see. But do they follow up? Now, you have touched on something. Cement. Before, there used to be only one type of cement. You could only make class 20 and class 30. Now we have a lot of Pozorana, OPC, and I don't want to talk about the cement and several classes of cement.
And what do they do? I mean,
now,
talk about it. I mean, what do they achieve?
And you recall I said, even if you are the best cement, the best steel, the best aggregate, the best sand, how you put them together is a different matter. You can even, what we do, you can corrugate very well in the mixer. Have the right mix. But when you go to place it, maybe all you are shattering has voids, and therefore all the grout comes out.
Okay.
So it is a continuous process that needs to be monitored. And the government, which is responsible for the safety of its people, is quite responsible. And we don't need more institutions.
I understand, but let me just hold you there, engineer. You're telling us things about engineering. So maybe this is why then you started at that point, that it's about engineering. So the people who are in charge, because from what we understand, every site construction, that fancy board that we see at every construction, you have your developer, you have your architect, you have your planner, you have your site engineer. So the assumption is that this engineer, if they're worth their salt, and we would hope that they were, have all of these things taken into consideration. Don't come and ask me about mixed grout or whatever.
Yeah.
The assumption is that you know what this formula is supposed to be. The question is, the person who approves these things to be done, we can only assume, should have the very basic knowledge of these things that you're talking about. Are we then saying that the person who is approving these projects to go ahead either does not have the knowledge of these details that you're telling us, has the knowledge but is ready to maybe take a kickback to allow a less than authentic process continue, or number three, just turns a blind eye to these poor
My friend here,
issues?
Philip, has even gone a step back. We are assuming that all buildings are approved. And he has just told you that probably in this Nairobi, maybe over 50% of the buildings that are coming up have not even ended up at City Hall. And therefore, City Hall is blind to those. And that is why I'm placing the responsibility, because the moment you start digging, before those 500 goons are brought, you should never start digging until you prove that you have approved plans.
To whom? To whom are you proving?
Exactly, and that is the role of the government, because the county governments ought to have people in estates. Let's say it is this area, they can divide it into 5 square meters and buy motorbikes for their people so that they are moving around, to know that the building has approved plans. Because the biggest problem, and he mentioned it, is that we have very many unapproved and what we call illegal structures. That means their records are not there at City Hall.
But engineer, unapproved meaning what exactly? Meaning the due process that is required to give you the authorization to start, or the existence of papers that indicate it's been approved, because you can have the papers but you didn't go through that process.
Exactly. Let me put it this way.
Yes.
The moment it's an illegal structure means the property could be yours or not even yours, because we have seen, like Bakasi, people don't have titles. You go, mnakanyaga hatua 10, you are told, Muga, this is your property. The next day, you have a fundi, alijenga ile nyumba, you start, I want build like that. You know, the way anasema, nijege kama ile ya Kisia. Ni mimi Kamau najega, nijege kama ile ya Kisia. Fundi wako wapi? And then you start. So City Hall, first of all, even the land that you are building on could not even be registered. You may not even have a title. Even if you had a title, City Hall has not seen your plans. You have not even submitted anything. That is an illegal structure. Then we could have a situation where City Hall has received fees and approved the plans and then doesn't follow up. So that's why I'm saying, at the end of the day, it's the government that is responsible.
Engineer, I want to take this discussion elsewhere.
Yes.
You see, when we started the show off air, I alluded to it. The lawyers have a school where you study law in the university, then they take you and tell you, before we actually allow you to go around representing people and doing these things, you have to go to that school, Kenyan School of Law, as they call it, okay?
Doctors?
Now, yes, doctors also have something similar. You go for internship, all these things. I'm sure engineers do. Now, you were in a position where the sort of structure I'm alluding to would be created. Why do I mention this? The impunity, we all understand, we know. The check and balance within government is next to non-existent. So, I see the Law Society of Kenya intervening in things, court cases. Now,
Exactly.
a similar body would provide the sort of oversight that the National Construction Authority might not be able to provide. But it would be effective because they are the people who have the training and the background and who are able to actually understand what ought to be done. Tell me, the structures to have such a school, the structures to ensure that such a body exists so that the regulation that we are talking of is actually in place.
Now, I alluded to the fact that we used to have the engineers registration board.
Yes.
That was the act of
Yes.
1969. During my tenure as PS, we worked on and amended to become the Engineers Act. Note, Engineers Registration Board, that means their work was just to register engineers in that period. Within that act, there is supposed to be a school of engineering where before engineers are registered, they come to what I would call a finishing school. You have done your 4 or 5 years of training, and then you come to that school for about three months, and then you become a professional engineer. And also, professional engineers go back there to what I would call refresher courses. So it's there in the Act. It has not been implemented. The National Construction Authority also ought to have such an institution, like in Korea, and we are basing it on Korea. Korea has an Institute of Construction Technology of Korea, where contractors actually go to upgrade their certificates. It's not just you presenting that you have 5 tracks, you have these, and you have that. You must prove that you have gone to an institute. Now, for example, I'll give you a good example. All road contractors, we made it mandatory that all road contractors, if you want to go and do rural roads, you must go to the KIBIT, Kenya Institute of Highways and Building Technology. And that is how you get a license to do road construction. And you must produce it before you are awarded a contract. So one of the things that should be happening is, for example, here the National Construction Authority can enter in forcefully, is to go to sites and find out, and they can do it within their regulations. If you are building, say, a storage building, you must be a registered contractor with them. Not just Muga deciding that now because I have money, I'm going to employ 2-3 foodies to build a 10-story building. So I must say that the registration framework, the registrative framework is there. We just have people who don't understand or who are not thinking, period.
What needs to be done? And I think this is the thing. Since we're talking about, a profession of solutions, we're looking for solutions again today. Philip came in all guns blazing and talking about, a government that can or should work. I have Honorable Shakil Shabir, who's sending me message after message talking about a group in Parliament now that is set up to do what? He says there is an architectural professional caucus just formed in Parliament. Ask Engineer PS to help us amend the said bill to be able to have them now be professionally engaged when it comes to things like this. Solutions is what we are looking for. Philip, in order for this thing to work, because for me, one building, one floor, one brick out of a building falling is enough, is more than enough. We don't have to have many more people dying. We don't have to have the loss. We're talking about billions of shillings in loss this year alone. Lives lost. We can castigate all, but what are we saying is the solution to this?
I'm happy that you say that, and my good brother engineer has already said that we have sufficient regulation. We have a lot of professionals. Kenya has a lot of qualified people. We're not short of qualified people, engineers, planners, architects, and what have you, lawyers, and name it. But I think the will of government to act is lacking. Simple. Because if government acted, if government invested in this area, like a place like Singapore, Malaysia, Korea, this nonsense will stop tomorrow. Because in those jurisdictions, if you went out of the act or regulations, you'll be in jail the following day. They don't waste time like we waste time here. Okay? You bribe your way through, you do the wrong things. Everything is done incorrectly because of what? The love of money. So the question that you are asking is, what can we do to stop? Number one, I've just said, and the engineer said, let people do it. Let the government act. But even as we are acting, there are certain interventions that we can put in place. I remember during my tenure, and I'm happy that the master plan that is being implemented right now was actually put together by my administration with the help of JICA, the master plan for Nairobi. What we failed to do was now to actually do spatial plans, area-specific plans. Okay? Then finally, the other thing that, because all the regulations are there, what we need to do, like engineer said, and I just want to probably add on something a little on what he has said. Have these people on picky and going around. I think, because see, all these institutions, be it National Construction Authority, be it City Planning Department, they may not have the capacity, internal capacity, to carry out this work. In my view, they can now start engaging professional bodies, okay? Professional bodies, to help them audit work that is being carried out. So the audit must start from day one. Continuous audit until the building is constructed. They then write a report to City Hall or to the other various agencies that are involved before an occupation certificate is issued. So there's monitoring as work is going on at every stage by professionals who have been outsourced because of lack of internal capacity. So these bodies, the Department of City Planning or the National Construction Authority, should, be left to manage the function. But the actual work is done by the professional bodies. I remember during my tenure, because the first thing I did, because that's where people make money, tusidanganyane hapa, that's where people make money in City Hall. When I came in, I said, number one thing that we must do in the city of Nairobi is to automate building plan approvals. No human contact.
In the system, it tells you whether you can go through or not.
You are here as an architect. This thing of saying, city, see, I pass by your office, I have these plans for approval. No.
How did that work?
We were sponsored by World Bank.
And does it function today?
It used to function during my time, okay? And give me a minute, I'll tell you.
We took a step backwards.
Let me tell you, that's where people make money. So I said, kata hiyo, remove this bloody nonsense. Get this thing automated, submit your plans using your AK register number. Submit your plans. Those plans are then received by a secretariat. And do you know what I did? I removed City Hall from that secretariat. Their job was just to facilitate that secretariat. I brought in engineers, planners, QSs, quantities. I brought in the professional body and I said, you know what? You have been blaming City Hall for collapsed building and poor work. I now make you in charge of approvals as a secretariat. And building plans in this city used to be approved every 2 weeks.
Multi-sectoral.
Multi-sectoral team. And I said every 2 weeks, I want to see. So once you have approved as professionals, and my team is providing secretariat services, the next step is to take it to as required by the bylaw, is taken to the planning committee. And I told the planning committee, you are councillors. I'm not a planner, I'm not an engineer. Once these guys have said this thing is right,
then
your job is to minute. Your job is to minute it, na kupitisha. We have no business. Okay? And that is why in 36 months, even the buildings who collapsed were not the ones that we had approved. The ones which were illegal or approved before we came in.
Honestly,
okay? So now...
Philip, I really wish you had come in earlier because now our time is running out.
Right.
And obviously, the solutions that you're talking about are things that actually can be practiced here. So I think this is a conversation that needs to continue in this in the manner in which it has started this morning. But, we're coming towards 8 o'clock. It's a menace. It's a problem. And one of the ways in which probably we can see change is continue to talk about it. In a quick yes or no, jail those responsible, engineer? Jail those responsible for a collapsed building in 10 seconds? Yes?
No? It won't help.
It won't help.
And the problem is even worse. You see, we are talking, and as I said, latent.
Yeah.
What's going to happen 20 years from now?
Yeah.
Number two, is not just new buildings. Nairobi now has aging buildings.
Yeah.
Who is actually auditing them, as Kisia said? I'm calling me Engineer Kisia. As he
Because
said.
I'm speaking like
Number
one.
two,
Yeah.
the alterations that are made. People are
Yeah.
moving into buildings and starting alterations
Yeah.
without,
Yeah.
it's
It's a problem.
a big problem.
Gentlemen, thank you for
But it's
joining us
government.
this morning. We're around about 8 o'clock.
And do you-
the conversations
just 2
continue.
seconds, 2 seconds.
We're at 8 o'clock, Philip,
Do
and
2
we need to
seconds.
come back and talk
Do
about
2
that
seconds.
another day.
You know-
Asante Sana Philip, Engineer Michael Kamau,
Shoot
thank
them.
you for joining us.
Shoot them. Don't jail them. Just shoot them.